in search of good human history. I only hope for difficulties. Dear brothers and sisters, Chinese president visited Russia earlier this week and has been touting a 12-point peace plan for Ukraine, which has been criticized for lack of detail on key issues. Xi Jinping. Russia is sending tanks from the 40s last centuries to the front line, signaling a likely shortage of armor for troops fighting in Ukraine. The Washington Post reported. According to photographs obtained by the Georgia-based conflict intelligence team, Stalin-era T-54 and T-55 tanks were spotted aboard a train heading west, though the open-source researchers could not confirm that they would be sent for use in combat. Between Avdiivka and Bakhmut, Ukrainian forces fight Russia on tough terrain. For Ukrainian soldiers outside the town of New York, in the eastern Donetsk region, shelling and destruction have been a part of life since 2014, when Russian forces and the separatist proxies began seizing territory in Donbass. Now they are caught between two raging battles, one to the northeast in Bakhmut and another to the southwest in Avdiivka, report the Post journalist. A breakout in those areas, leaders have said, would strangle supply routes into the area and risk units, they're becoming encircled. In this grinding war, with advances made in feet, not miles, the joining of Russian troops from north and south into a unified westward pushing line of attack would be a major triumph and would further President Putin's goal of seizing all of the Donetsk region, as well as three others, Luhansk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson. What is Beijing playing? Allied units in action in Ukraine. Is Putin under the influence of drugs? Here's the latest on the war and its impact across the globe. President Biden is expected to discuss support for Ukraine with Canadian President Justin Trudeau during meeting Friday. White House spokeswoman Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters. Canada has committed around $630 million in military assistance to Ukraine, its government says. The International Criminal Court signed an agreement to establish a country office in Ukraine a week after the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin on charges of reporting Ukrainian children. Zelensky said the move would allow international justice to be even more active in investigating Russia on Ukrainian soil. Russia, like the United States, does not accept the International Criminal Court's jurisdiction. The Committee to Protect Journalists warned Ukrainian officials not to limit press access to front lines. In a statement, the New York-based not-profit said recent regulations issued by Ukraine operational commands preventing media from accessing red zones deemed most dangerous battlefronts could stifle journalists' ability to do their jobs and hinder crucial wartime reporting global impact. The European Union wants to help return some 16,000 Ukrainian children who were abducted to Russia, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said Thursday, adding that about 300 children had been returned so far. The European Union hopes to pull together international pressure to take all possible measures to establish the whereabouts of these children, she added. The United States has also accused Russia of deporting hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians to Russia and forcibly separating children from their families. As I said above, arresting Putin on a visit abroad would amount to declaring a war against Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, the Russian Security Council deputy chairman, said Thursday, according to state news agency TASS. United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken said earlier this week that European countries should detain and hand Putin over to the International Criminal Court if he visits. Germany's Federal Minister of Justice said it would do so, while Hungary would not, Prime Minister Viktor Orban's chief of staff said Thursday. More Ukraine live briefing. Zelensky visit Kherson. European allies promise more artillery, as I said. Ukrainian president visit the front line in Kherson on Thursday. More than 50 villages in Kherson have been completely destroyed by Russia, with more than 90% of buildings in some locations ruined, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said, after a visit to the embattled southern region. But even in such villages, people return, and this is proof that life still prevails. He added in his nightly address on Thursday, Zelensky has been touring Ukraine's front line region and visited Bakhmut a day earlier. European Union leaders promised to jointly deliver 1 million rounds of artillery ammunition to Ukraine in the next year. They said at the Leaders' Summit that they would also provide missiles upon Kiev's request without specifying what type, adding the European Union member states have made available about 73 billion to Ukraine since the war began. Member state Slovakia, meanwhile, has delivered 4 of the 13 MiG-29 fighter jets it has pledged to Ukraine, its defense minister said. Ukraine's victory over Russia could occur this year, Zelensky told the European Council by video link Thursday, provided there are no delays or stagnation in defense cooperation. He added that delays in the supply of weapons, including long-range missiles, were hampering Ukrainian troops on the battlefield. And another side of this word of mine. Ex-oligarch Putin promised to rule just 2 years. Sergei Pugachev told the BBC Hard Talk program that the agreement at that time was Putin would then let someone else stand and get elected. Speaking to Steven Sacker in France, where he now lives having renounced his Russian citizenship, Mr. Pugachev said nobody in 1999 thought of Putin as the person who could build a new Russia. The goal instead was to stop the communists gaining power, claimed Mr. Pugachev, who was instrumental in Mr. Putin's campaign to become president. It was a question of whether democracy would be able to survive in Russia or not. There was no choice. You couldn't say if it's not Putin, then perhaps it will be somebody else. We only had one option. Since leaving the country, the Russian state has pursued Mr. Pugachev through the courts, accusing him of massive financial crimes, which he denies. Asked whether he and the other oligarchs, whom he says struck the deal with Putin, ultimately underestimated the Russian president, Mr. Pugachev replied, "We couldn't imagine what was going to happen in 2023. He said the Russian people are responsible for the political situation. Now 70% of Russian population is with Putin. Ultimately, it wasn't Putin who built the Russia we see today. Russia made Putin in the way he is today, Mr. Pugachev said. I saw this happen with my own eyes. This is very important to understand. Another politician member of Russia State Duma about war crimes charges said they are stupid. The decision, the International Criminal Court war crimes charges stupid. The decision by the International Criminal Court to issue an arrest warrant against Vladimir Putin on war crimes charges was tremendously stupid and means nothing, according to an influential Russian. Evgeny Popov, who is also a prominent television host on Russian state television, told the BBC Halt Talk program that the charges means nothing for Russia. It means nothing for the Russian president, and it will not change the way Putin made his decisions. Quote ends. Speaking from Moscow, Mr. Popov told Steven Sachar that the decision would make ending the war harder. You are going to close all ways to negotiate with Russia by this decision. It's the final step to close any possibility to negotiate, he said. At this point, I would like to mention in the next future. The International Criminal Court case centers on claims on unlawful deportation of thousands of children from Ukraine, I said, to Russia since Moscow invasion in 1922. But Mr. Popov said that rather than deporting the children, Russia was saving them. Thousands of children were in danger during the war. Russia has to save their lives. And of course, Russia should and must give them a normal life in Russia. Mr. Popov denied the claim made by International Criminal Court prosecutor Karim Khan that the children were being used as spoil of war. Mr. Popov said it's not true. Not true, of course. We must save the lives of those children, and they are safe right now. They are in a safe territory. The International Criminal Court said it found reasonable grounds that Putin bears individual criminal responsibility for the child abductions and for failing to exercise control properly over civilian and military subordinates who committed the acts. Kremlin spokesman said Russia does not recognize the International Criminal Court and consider its decisions legally void. He called the court's move outrageous and unacceptable, and so on. Dear beloved brothers and sisters, in search of good human history, and I mentioned, I hope for difficulties, would have been saying this phrase, St. Thomas. You have to negotiate. We are living witnesses to a very good history, I believe. Happiness is wanting what you get. But this muddy land in Ukraine, I was watching television and I saw the battlefield in Ukraine, close to the Bakhmut, in mud. This muddy land in Ukraine is a witness to this good history of ours. Beautiful landscapes are not suitable for good paintings. Happiness doesn't make good histories. Happiness cannot be described. It is like mist, like smoke, transparent and fleeting. Have you ever seen a painter who could join smoke in an era of war between Russia and Ukraine, with Ukraine? We all live after death, in a sense, I ponder. I believe also in the memories of the people, our children, and in what we've created, we will be alive. Happiness is wanting what you get. In this unformed landscape in Ukraine, close to the Bakhmut front line, now in the war Ukraine with Russia. The only driving force behind my work was always desire, I think. In that, I only hope on difficulties, a kind of hunger for reality, presence, and also intimacy, as opposed to publicity. In a very broad sense, I was interested in transcendence always, and I'm seeing this transcendence on the battlefield in Ukraine. In this time, when I really feel like dancing, there was in Carnival, last Carnival. I want someone who knows how to lead. We need negotiations, I believe, and not looking at others. Our Pope is watching a television program with children called I Have Talent, and he gets excited. That's good, but will it be enough for the time of war, when people are starving in Madagascar, and in Ukraine people still have to escape with their children and lives? And in my case, as I said, I hope for difficulty in this time. Dust after the bombs explode was also, I said, sometimes in material form now, but in any case a lot of time seem to have accumulated in my studio apartments, for example, because everything was covered with a thin, almost transparent layer of dust. But you are what you love. You are what you love. I mean, what do I mean by that? That you are what you love, not who loves you. That the man who loves always wins, whether his love is fulfilled or not. Even in Częstochowa city, where I spent most of my time with my priest friends, there are now huge field works. The city is dug up because the workers are laying a new surface, a new walled soft road, but I don't care about it. Happiness for me is very important. Happiness is filled with doubts, unhappiness with lies. If you want to describe our happiness, you have to make a lot of little dots, like Sarah paintings, you see, and that was lucky you will see only from a distance. Someone else would say, I hardly know anyone in the city, nobody to be exact. I've fallen in love with face a few times, but I've learned to avoid those feelings before they become a threat. I've been through a few failed relationship, and really, without making a decision, I've accepted my loneliness for the moment. Also in my city, in my town. And now, another story. My parents were very aware of difficulties of life, but did not make a fuss about their beliefs, so as not to jeopardize their careers. Mom was a faithful worker. My father was a professor at the agricultural university. He had a lot of forest, family forest, and during World War II, as a habilitated professor, thanks to the intercession of the Swedes, he was released from the Sachsenhausen camp and returned to Krakow. I was an only child. I was not a bad student, but an outsider, as far as I knew. I have few friends. I was extremely quiet and stubborn about science at the same time, but I've learned to avoid those feelings before they become a threat, I said. For this reason, there was always something wrong with me. I was then often ill and had diffuse long-term ailments, which meant that I was often absent in everyday life in Poland during John Paul's pontificate, the Pope from Poland, Polish Republic of People. As fear is the possibility of freedom, please don't be naive. My country is as old or as young as any other country, but here I have the feeling that anything is still possible. I want to according to the forest of my father. I went to the forest yesterday to see the forest yesterday, and I was there. There is no future or past in the forest. Everything happens in the moment. For example, sunny day, or in periods of time that cannot be measured in years. And I noticed the forest only when I was already there, when I was open to wasting time. Beloved brothers and sisters, how many will be saved? Bishop Barron's Sunday sermon, very interesting, about massa damnata of the people, that the person who loves always wins, whether the love is fulfilled or not. As I said, we must see the difficulties of today and to provide the negotiations at any possibility. Happiness is painting with dots, unhappiness with lines. If you want to describe our happiness, you have to draw many small dots, and that it was happiness you will only see from a distance. You may be saved. You should be saved. As a Christians, there is a lot of optimism in the Czech Republic today. On March 24, the Biało-Czerwoni start Euro 2024 qualifiers with a new coach, Fernando Santos. Will Portuguese start his work with a win over the Czech Republic? I wish Poland a victory. God bless you.